Hey guys, welcome back to YouTube. My name is Barrett with Espresso Outlet, and today I wanted to cover something that I think is on a lot of people's minds in terms of the DF64. So recently the DF64 Gen 2 just hit the market, and I see a lot of questions about what exactly is new. Should I upgrade? Should I have this as my first grinder? How does this compare to some other grinders? We're really not going to compare it to other grinders or other brands today, but we are going to compare it against the Gen 1 DF64. So in front of me, I have this DF64. It is the first generation, and this is the version 4. Now, through the years, we started carrying this in early 2020, and there's been just very incremental upgrades to this grinder. So this is the version 4. Really the most current version right now is the version 5. And the biggest difference in my eyes is it has different burrs. It actually will have the same burrs as this Gen 2. We'll take a look at that in a minute. And it also has the metal dosing cup similar to the Gen 2. So if you have the version 5, they're probably quite a bit more similar than the version 4. I just don't have that in front of me. So let's take a closer look at both of these and just kind of dive into some of the differences and just have a little discussion about, is this right for you? Okay, let's just talk about some of the differences on these two grinders. Now, the original DF64, the first generation, it came with a vinyl wrap. And I felt like it looked very nice on the outside, but it gave the ability to come in quite a few different colors. This one is obviously bright green, which I know probably wasn't a fan favorite, but I enjoy green. But you were able to get copper, red, carbon fiber, all these different really unique, instead of paint, outer coatings. With the Gen 2, it's going to come in black or white, at least for now. And it's a very nice black or white painted surface. So looks very sharp. This black, it's not like a very deep matte black, but it's definitely not a gloss black. I felt like it sitting next to my espresso machine or on my coffee bar. It looks very premium in person. I feel like the paint is an upgrade, but just know that you're not going to have that really large color option that you had with the Gen 1. So you can see these are essentially the same size. If you're looking to add maybe a second grinder to your lineup, they are very complementary to each other, but they do have a slightly different look to them. Originally, the front of this is a solid piece. So people that were trying to remove or replace their declumpers, people were doing declumper mods or just completely removing them, it was a little bit difficult to take off. You had to take off this bottom plate and unscrew this power button to get this whole face off. With this Gen 2, if you're ever needing to replace your declumper, it's as simple as one single screw in the front, and when you remove this top collar, there's 2 additional screws on the top. Now they kind of took some of the inspiration from the DF83 and the way that this comes off, but the DF83, it's very difficult to pull off. And quite a few people, because they're pointed at the wrong angle, may end up breaking it. This one just comes off very smooth and easy. So very welcome upgrade if you're going to mess with your declumper. We're gonna play with it a little bit more in a bit because I don't really think you're gonna need to mess with your declumper unless you were to damage it with a screwdriver or something like that. Okay, so now probably the biggest complaint that I've seen on this Gen 2 is the dreaded red power button. Now, I personally, as soon as I pulled it out of the box, I said, people are gonna complain about this. I think it looks really nice. It's maybe not as nice as the silver that came on the Gen 1 versions, but the problem with the Gen 1 version is the button is front and center, and depending on how you did your dosing, you had to reach up under your dosing cup to hit the button. It really wasn't that big of a deal. You use it for a few days and you kind of stop thinking about it. They obviously replaced the button entirely and we'll put a red button off to the side. So the new location is pretty amazing. I love it. It's not completely on the side. It's not completely on the front. It's not on the back or somewhere strange. I feel like it's in the perfect location. Just for now, it's red. It's probably a bigger deal on the white version. You're gonna notice it a little bit more. But if you take a look around your kitchen, I mean, my espresso machine sitting right next to it has a couple red lights on it. I've seen like the Lit brand, they have like a big red placard on it. So I really don't feel like it's that big of a deal, but just something to note because I know some people didn't really care for that. Okay, we're gonna take a look at the top side of these grinders a little bit. You can see on the green one, it has this green dial indicator. Now after the version 4, they started supplying these metal arrows. And I just didn't really love it on mine. I feel like this aftermarket one just looks a little bit better on this grinder, but do know that it does come with this metal dial indicator, even on the version 4 and 5. I just opted to upgrade that, and I couldn't find it to put on, or I would have put it on today. But it will come with both. That was kind of one of the early issues with the grinder is, if you look in the very front, there's like a very small line that you can hardly see, and that was your main dial indicator. It's very hard to use. Using something like this is a really nice upgrade. Now if we pull off the bellows on these, so this one, it came with a metal lid, and I've always liked the metal lid, but they've been changing over to these kind of just walnut style lids, and it looks very premium. If you're trying to go for that blacked out look and you're curious, the other lid does fit on this one. It's a little bit loose. It's not like they fit particularly tight on this one either. I feel like they fit about the same, but just know that you can probably pick one of these up if you wanted that blacked out look. Next, if we pull off the bellows, we can see that the bellows are different. Let's just keep them the same way. So the bellow on the DF64 Gen 1, it kind of has this collar that goes down into this funnel. And that was really nice just to keep it in place. It's easy to pull off your lid. But that brings me to something that I'm really excited about on the Gen 2. So the Gen 2 has this anti-popcorn device built in. Now you could buy an aftermarket one for your Gen 1 DF64, and it does simply go into place like that. And they work very well. But your DF64 Gen 2 is going to come with it stock, and I've done some testing. Go out and check out some of my other videos where I just load beans directly in, no bellow, no lid, and the few times that I've done it, I've not gotten any coffee out. Now, you will probably at some point have a bean go flying out, and it's just kind of the luck of the draw that day, but just know that this anti-popcorn works extremely well. So while we're looking at just the tops, you can see that this, even though it might look like plastic, it is actually a piece of cast aluminum that's been powder coated. So it's been a nice adjustment collar. But that's probably one of my favorite just aesthetics upgrade to this grinder is it has this polished adjustment ring, and I think it looks fantastic. It has a nice fluid feel to the top, and it just really pops in my kitchen. Now, it's not like it's a fully chromed out grinder or all black or all white, and it's just gonna kind of absorb. It's just a nice contrast, I think, to this grinder. Okay, so now it's time to take a look at the burrs, and the best way to do that is just to remove the tops of everything on your grinder, and we're going to remove our dial indicators and okay, so let's just look at some of the obvious things, and then we're going to point some of the not so obvious things out to you. So you can see that this new Gen 2, it's actually all filled in. I really like this new burr carrier design. Seems to be a lot more premium. This design, it had a little bit more open of an area, so you did get a little bit of grounds in there. It wasn't the end of the world, and I could just usually blow them out, and it stayed pretty clean, but I feel like the new upgraded design is substantially nicer. Now, if we pull off the burrs, I didn't swap my burrs. These are the SSP high uniformity burrs, and this isn't really what comes with the grinder stock, but this is an aftermarket upgrade that a lot of people do like to purchase. So just out of the grinder, this Gen 2 comes with these really nice and quite similar to the high uniformity SSP burrs. So let's do a side by side. And really, just from a distance, even though they look fairly similar, they do have a lot of dissimilar cut patterns when you look under like maybe a microscope or really up close. But I really feel like side by side, I've been extremely impressed with these stock burrs in the Gen 2. So this is a $185 upgrade for these SSPHUs, and these come stock. These aren't upgraded at all. Now, if you are looking to do an upgrade, there is the exact same burr from the same manufacturer, same cut pattern, and it has a DLC coating on it. And if that's the first time you've heard about DLC, it's called Diamond-like Carbon. It's a coating that they put on there that's just extremely hard, but has a very low coefficient of friction. So I've used them in the DF64V, and I've used these. I like the uncoated just as much as the DLC, but you might get a little bit more bang for your buck out of the DLC. That's really up for your own, this personal choice as you're picking out your grinder and your burr options. So on the Gen 1 model, they had the burr carrier rest on 3 springs. And while it worked well for most people, if you didn't put the springs in correctly or you lost a spring, then you had some issues. So what they decided to do is follow suit on what they have done with the DF83 and put a wave spring on. Now it's a little bit hard to see. There's a wave spring in there. And what's really cool about that is instead of it having just 3 points of contact where it can rock off to the side, you get a very flat contact point. You get 6 points of contact. And I think that's really huge for improving the grind consistency on the Gen 2. Now, if you install your burr carriers correctly, you really don't have that big of an issue, but if you like to clean your grinder and you put it back together, you get a little bit frustrated because it's not grinding quite right, you may have to take it back apart and just reset your springs. So not a real big deal, but I really do find that the wave spring upgrade on the Gen 2 is fantastic. It's been used on the DF83 for over a year now, and I've not really seen anyone complain about it. I'm sure there's someone, but very nice. Here's just another look on how that wave spring works. So you have the wave spring that rides on that carrier, and it just sets on this little lip. So very welcome addition. Now we have already talked a little bit about the chute design, about how if you are going to access your Declumper, the Gen 2 is going to be quite a bit easier to get to. It's just 3 simple screws. It's not going to take very much time at all. Now, I really don't feel like you need to, but if you do need to or do damage it, it's very simple in this. But you can tell that the chute, they are just a slightly different geometry, but not that big of a difference. I do feel like the Gen 2 is slightly more down, and that accommodates this metal dosing cup and dosing collar. Now, this dosing collar, it can fit onto a 58mm portafilter, and you can use it as a dosing collar. But what's really nice about it is it does extend the top of the dosing cup all the way up to that mouth. Now on the DF64 Gen 1, just stock out of the box, it didn't really do a good job of that. Now if you were to bellow extremely hard, what would happen is people would end up blowing the grounds over that front lip. Now if you do it the way you're supposed to do it, do a nice light little pump of the bellow, it's really not that big of a deal. Now there have been products hit the market that have really drastically improved it, such as this cup tilter. And what that did is it tilts your dosing cup so that it aligns with the spout. Now, this tilter will work on the Gen 2 if you so choose. I kind of like it a little bit better because I feel like having this dosing collar can just be one more extra thing that might interfere with just my puck prep. It does stay on very well, but I have found myself kind of pulling it off, and it hadn't really become a part of my full routine yet, we'll put it that way. But I do really like that extension, so just really take a look at what works for your lifestyle, and know that this comes with the Gen 2. Obviously this one does not, so really value packed out of the box. This setup does work with the Gen 1 because I know it has been coming with the version 5. So yet again, really versatile. So if you're looking to maybe upgrade your Gen 1 grinder, some of these things you can upgrade very easily. So something that I am most excited about is something that you can't even see. And inside of the chute on the Gen 2, there is the addition of a plasma generator or an ion generator. I typically call it an ion generator. What it does is it has 2 small probes that create a small amount of plasma, and why that is something that's going to be really important to your daily routine is it reduces the amount of static in your coffee grounds. Now, I know y'all, if you've had one of the DF64s or maybe a Brazza, or there's a lot of grinders out there, when you are grinding, especially on a coarser setting, some of that chaff is going to want to stick to the outside of your grinder, and that can be really annoying. So with the addition of this ion generator, that small amount of plasma that it creates really reduces the static. And I have completely dedicated videos to this, so we're not going to run it and talk about that today. Go check out those videos because I've done a lot of testing on fine settings, coarse settings. I picked some of these Ethiopian beans that were just extremely chaff bombs. Even when roasting them, they make so much chaff. And very minimal chaff on the outside. Very impressed with the way this has worked. I know the few YouTubers that have gotten this out of the box and they pulled it out. They were kind of expecting the Gen 1 vibe of when I run coarse setting for my coffee grounds that I'm going to get some chaff, and they ran it on the Gen 2 and they're like, where's the chaff? So while we're talking about that, I do have another video dedicated just to the Declumper. It's a very simple Declumper. It's just a single flap. It's worked great for me. My grounds, they've not had really any clumps. It's not like completely fluffy, but I'm still breaking this grinder in. I have been using it pretty much extensively for the past few weeks, but until I get like at least 10, 12 pounds through it, that's when things really start to smooth out. That Declumper, it's going to naturally kind of bend itself to a position that it works at. It's kind of optimal positioning, and your burrs, they're going to be completely seasoned. So been really impressed with the way this thing performs. Okay, so before we wrap things up, there have been a few more questions that I've been asked just through emails or I've seen on Facebook. And I think the biggest one is, are there going to be upgrades for the Gen 1 that are these similar Gen 2 options? Now, for right now, there are certain things that will work, such as we showed you the dosing cup will fit on, your dial indicator will work on either of these. Even, it's not ideal, but I did some testing and I put this anti-popcorn on and it does fit, but it's very loose. So you might be seeing some upgrades in the future, but for the most part, at least for right now, like your plasma generator and upgrades like that are not available for the Gen 1 model. But that said, if you got upgrade-itis, is this gonna really change your life? I don't know if it's really gonna change your life if you have a really nice version 1. If this is your first grinder, I'd definitely probably try to go for the version 2, the Gen 2. I really feel like it does have some fantastic upgrades, and you may as well go with what's the best at the moment. I still love my version 1. I have 2 of them. I have one with the high uniformity, and then I have another with the SSP multi-purpose burrs. So I'm gonna keep them that way, and I still use them all the time. I've done some side-by-side testing with both of these. Talking about the burrs earlier, I feel like the new version 5 or the Gen 2 burrs, now they're the same burr, they are very fantastic. I feel like they offer just everything that the Italmill offered with a little bit more clarity, which I personally like. Now, if you're trying to go overboard with the clarity, you're gonna want to go with like a multi-purpose MP burr from SSP. But just out of the box, I mean, basically $185 upgraded burrs, you're getting a plasma generator, you're getting just really nice aesthetics, you're getting the metal dosing cups, you're getting just so much for about 400 bucks. So really can't go wrong. Thanks for watching. It always helps us to hit subscribe. Go out there, we have a lot of videos on specifically this Gen 2 lately. If you take a deeper look, we have a lot of videos on the version 1 as well. So if you have questions on either of these, make sure to hit us up in the comments. You can find our email on our website. Hit that subscribe. Thanks for watching.